The village of Marabad was known for one terrifying legend, a night the locals called the Black Night. Every year, on the same date, the villagers locked their doors before sunset and refused to step outside until morning. No one explained why, and outsiders believed it was only superstition. Ahmed returned to the village after many years in the city to sell his late parents' old house. As he arrived, he noticed an unusual silence spreading across the streets. Shops closed early, windows were covered, and people avoided eye contact with him. An old woman stopped him near the mosque and warned him in a trembling voice, "Tonight is the Black Night. Whatever happens, don't open your door." Ahmed dismissed the warning as fear born from old myths. That evening, as darkness fell, the electricity suddenly went out across the entire village. A cold wind crept through the cracks of the house, carrying faint whispers that sounded almost human. The air felt heavy, as if something unseen was watching him. Around midnight, slow footsteps echoed outside his door. Then came a soft knock. "Ahmed, open the door," a familiar voice called. His heart froze. It was his mother's voice, the same gentle tone he remembered, even though she had died years ago. Trembling, he moved closer and looked through a small crack in the door. Standing outside was a tall, unmoving shadow shaped like a person, darker than the night itself. Its head slowly tilted toward him, as if it knew he was watching. The knocking grew louder. Bloody handprints appeared across the wooden door from the outside. Only then did Ahmed understand the truth. The Black Night was real, and it had come for him. The knocking suddenly stopped, and the door handle began to turn on its own. Ahmed barely slept after the strange knocking stopped. Silence filled the house, but it was not peaceful. It felt alive. The air had turned freezing cold, and every shadow in the room seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at it. He convinced himself it was only fear playing tricks on his mind. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from inside the house. Ahmed froze. He was certain all doors and windows were locked. The sound came from the hallway where old family photographs hung on the walls. Slowly, he stepped out of his room, his phone flashlight shaking in his hand. As the light passed over the photographs, he noticed something horrifying. The faces in the pictures were changing. The smiles of his relatives slowly faded into expressions of terror. In one frame, his mother's image appeared darker, her eyes completely black. A whisper came from behind him. "You open the door." Ahmed spun around, but no one was there. The hallway stretched longer than before, as if the house itself had grown. The main door at the end was now slightly open, moving back and forth with a creaking sound. Cold mist rolled inside, covering the floor. Within it, a tall shadow began forming. The same figure he had seen earlier. Its shape twisted unnaturally, and faint cries echoed from within it, as though many voices were trapped together. Ahmed tried to run, but the lights flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The shadow moved closer without walking. A freezing hand touched his shoulder, and countless whispers filled his ears at once. By morning, the villagers gathered outside Ahmed's house. The door stood wide open, the rooms completely empty. On the wall, written in fresh blood, were the words, "One more taken. The Black Night continues." The villagers of Marabad were not surprised when Ahmed disappeared. Fear had prepared them for it. Every year, after the Black Night, one house was left empty. No bodies were ever found. Only silence and a warning written somewhere inside. But this time, something was different. 3 nights after Ahmed vanished, strange things began happening across the village. Doors opened by themselves. Animals refused to leave their shelters, and children claimed they saw a man standing near the well at midnight. A man who looked confused and lost. Fatima, a young schoolteacher, did not believe in ghost stories. Determined to prove the rumors false, she decided to investigate Ahmed's abandoned house. The villagers begged her not to go, but curiosity pushed her forward. Inside, the house felt colder than the winter air outside. Dust covered everything, yet fresh footprints marked the floor, leading toward the back room. Fatima followed them carefully. The walls were filled with scratched marks, as if someone had tried desperately to escape. In the center of the room stood a mirror she had never seen before, tall and old, its surface covered with dark stains. As she stepped closer, the reflection did not match her movements. Behind her reflection stood Ahmed. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, and his mouth moved slowly without sound. Suddenly, words appeared across the mirror as if written by an invisible hand. It doesn't take bodies, it takes souls. The room temperature dropped instantly. Fatima felt a cold breath near her ear. From inside the mirror, multiple hands began pressing outward, trying to break through the glass. The lights shattered, plunging the room into darkness, followed by Fatima's terrified scream echoing through the empty village. Outside, the wind carried a whisper once again. The Black Knight is coming back. Fatima's scream was heard across Marabad, but by the time villagers gathered outside Ahmed's house, the door was locked from the inside. No one dared enter. They already feared what the Black Knight had left behind. By morning, courage finally overcame fear. The village elder and a few men pushed the door open. Inside, everything was silent, too silent. The air smelled damp, and the walls were covered with faint black stains spreading like shadows. Fatima was gone. Only the tall mirror remained standing in the back room. Its surface was now cracked, yet strangely reflective, as if something inside it was still moving. One of the men stepped closer and suddenly stumbled backward in terror. For a brief second, he claimed he saw multiple faces trapped behind the glass, silently screaming. The elder immediately ordered the mirror to be covered with cloth and taken outside. The villagers believed destroying it would end the curse. They carried it to the village square and set a fire beneath it. As flames rose, a loud, unnatural sound filled the air, not breaking glass, but something closer to distant cries. The fire grew violently, yet the mirror refused to burn. Instead, the sky above darkened unnaturally fast, even though it was still afternoon. A freezing wind swept through the village. Doors slammed shut on their own. Children began crying without reason. Then the mirror cracked loudly on its own. From the broken surface, a wave of black smoke escaped and spread into the sky like living darkness. The villagers watched helplessly as shadows stretched across the ground toward every house. That night arrived earlier than it should have, and for the first time, the elder realized the horrifying truth. The mirror was never the curse. It was only a door. After the mirror shattered, fear consumed the village of Marabad. Darkness spread unnaturally fast, covering the sky hours before sunset. The villagers locked themselves inside their homes, realizing that the Black Night had begun early, and this time, something had changed. Inside his house, the village elder searched through old wooden chests containing records passed down for generations. Among dusty papers and faded photographs, he discovered a centuries-old journal written by the village's founder. His hands trembled as he read the truth hidden for decades. Long ago, the land where Marabad stood was not a village, but a burial ground for people accused of dark rituals. According to the journal, a powerful entity was sealed using mirrors, which acted as barriers between the living world and a realm of trapped souls. Every year, the seal weakened for one night, demanding a single soul to remain closed. But the villagers had unknowingly destroyed the final seal. Outside, strange noises echoed through the streets, dragging footsteps, whispers calling names, and shadows moving across rooftops without bodies. The darkness felt heavier, almost breathing. The elder gathered a few brave villagers and revealed the truth. If the entity was not sealed again before midnight, the Black Night would never end, and the entire village would vanish. As they prepared to perform an old ritual described in the journal, the temperature suddenly dropped. Lamps flickered violently, and a deep voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You broke the door, now all belong to me." The ground beneath them trembled. From every reflective surface, windows, water pots, even metal tools, dark shapes began emerging. The villagers realized with horror that the entity no longer needed the mirror. It had already entered their world. The village elder and a small group gathered inside the old mosque, the only place believed to remain untouched by the spreading darkness. Outside, Mehrabad no longer looked familiar. Thick black fog covered the streets, swallowing houses one by one. The sounds of whispers echoed constantly, calling villagers by name and luring them toward the shadows. The elder explained the ritual described in the ancient journal. To seal the entity again, a living person had to willingly stand at the center of the ritual circle and act as a gateway, allowing the trapped souls to return while forcing the entity back into its prison. It was a sacrifice no one had spoken about for generations. Fear filled the room. No one stepped forward. Suddenly, the mosque doors slammed shut on their own. The lantern lights dimmed, and cold air rushed through the hall. A dark figure slowly formed near the entrance, not fully solid, but shaped from smoke and moving shadows. Within the figure's shifting form, the villagers saw faces: Ahmed, Fatima, and many others lost in past black nights. Their expressions were frozen in silent terror. A weak voice echoed from the darkness. "Help us!" The elder realized the trapped souls were still conscious, imprisoned inside the entity. Time was running out. Outside, screams rang through the village as more people disappeared into the fog. A young boy named Hamza stepped forward, trembling but determined. He revealed that the whispers had been calling him all night, promising to spare the village if he came willingly. Before anyone could stop him, Hamza entered the ritual circle drawn on the mosque floor. The shadows instantly reacted, rushing toward the building like a storm. Windows shattered as darkness forced its way inside. The ritual had begun, but no one knew whether it would save the village or open the door completely. As Hamza stood inside the ritual circle, the air inside the mosque became unbearably cold. The symbols drawn on the floor began glowing faintly, reacting to an unseen force. Outside, the black fog spun violently around the building, as if the entire darkness of the village had gathered at one point. The elder started reciting the ancient words from the journal, his voice shaking but determined. Each sentence echoed unnaturally, repeating itself as though spoken by many unseen mouths. The lantern flames stretched upward, turning pale blue. Hamza's body trembled. Shadows slowly crept across the floor toward him, stopping at the edge of the circle like living creatures waiting for permission. Whispering voices filled the mosque, hundreds of overlapping cries begging for release. Suddenly, Hamza lifted his head. His eyes turned completely black. A deep voice spoke through him, not belonging to a child. "You cannot close what has awakened." The ritual symbols flickered, nearly fading. The villagers panicked, believing the ritual had failed. The elder realized the entity was trying to possess Hamza completely and break the circle before the sealing could finish. Gathering his courage, the elder placed the old journal into the center flame, sacrificing the last written protection to strengthen the ritual. Fire burst upward, forming a ring of light around Hamza. From the darkness, shadowy figures began pulling away from the entity, emerging like smoke being torn apart. The trapped souls, including Ahmed and Fatima, appeared briefly, reaching outward as if freed from chains. The entity let out a terrifying, echoing roar that shook the mosque walls. Cracks spread across the floor as darkness fought violently against the ritual's power. The light and shadow collided in a storm of supernatural energy. And then, suddenly, everything went silent. No one knew whether the ritual had succeeded or if something far worse had just been released. The silence inside the mosque felt unnatural, heavier than the chaos that came before it. The glowing symbols on the floor slowly faded, and the cold air began to settle. For a brief moment, the villagers believed the ritual had worked. Hamza collapsed to the ground, unconscious but breathing. The elder rushed toward him while others looked around cautiously. The black fog outside the windows appeared thinner, and the whispers had stopped. Hope returned, but only for a moment. A faint cracking sound echoed through the mosque. At first, No one noticed where it came from. Then the elder looked down at the floor. The ritual circle was breaking apart on its own, thin dark lines spreading across the symbols like ink poisoning water. The lantern lights flickered again. From the shadows behind the pillars, movement began, slow and deliberate. A tall figure stepped forward, darker than before, no longer shapeless. It now had a clearer human form, its surface shifting like smoke trapped inside skin. The villagers realized the horrifying truth. The ritual had not sealed the entity. It had given it form. The freed souls had escaped, but their energy had strengthened the creature instead of imprisoning it. The entity no longer needed mirrors, fog, or darkness to exist. It now walked freely among the living. Hamza suddenly opened his eyes and gasped. In a weak voice, he whispered, "It's not leaving, it's choosing." The shadow turned its head slowly toward the villagers. Wherever its gaze fell, lights died instantly. One by one, people felt an invisible pressure tightening around them, as if their souls were being pulled outward. The mosque doors burst open, revealing a sky completely swallowed by darkness. The Black Night had evolved, and this time, dawn might never come. The village of Marabad trembled under the new reign of darkness. The entity, now fully formed, moved silently through the streets, its presence bending reality. Houses seemed to stretch unnaturally, alleyways twisted, and familiar paths disappeared into void-like shadows. Anyone who stepped outside vanished instantly, leaving behind only whispers in the wind. Inside the mosque, the villagers huddled together, realizing their numbers were dwindling. Hamza, still weak from the ritual, tried to warn them. It doesn't take bodies anymore, it takes the mind. Whoever looks at it too long is gone. His voice was barely audible over the heavy silence. The elder, shaking, remembered the last line in the journal. The only way to stop the Black Night was to trap the entity in a reflection of itself, a mirror created from the purest silver, etched with the original protective symbols. But the village had no mirror left. The last one had been destroyed, and no one knew where such silver could be found at this hour. A sudden crash echoed from the main hall of the mosque. The entity appeared there first, looming above the villagers, a towering shadow with countless faces twisting within it. Its voice, deep and fractured, filled the room. "You cannot run. You cannot hide. The Black Night belongs to me." Panic set in. The villagers screamed, some fleeing toward the streets, only to vanish into the fog. The elder grabbed Hamza and led him to a small water basin, the only reflective surface in the mosque. Its surface was still silvered faintly by moonlight. With trembling hands, he recited the sealing words once more. The entity lunged toward the reflection, its form twisting violently. Light and shadow collided, creating an ear-piercing roar. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. As the smoke cleared, the entity was gone, but the reflection now showed not the villagers, but the endless darkness of the Black Night, hinting that its return was inevitable. The village of Marabad lay in uneasy silence. The entity's attack had ended, but the aftermath was worse than the villagers could imagine. Buildings were cracked, streets warped, and an unnatural fog clung to every corner. The survivors huddled inside the mosque, exhausted and terrified, unsure if dawn would ever come. Hamza, still pale and trembling, stared into the faint reflection of the water basin. The Black Night had retreated, for now, but the reflection revealed something horrifying. Countless shadowy figures lined the edges, moving subtly, as if waiting for a signal to rise again. The entity was not destroyed. It was dormant, feeding on fear and silence. The elder, reading the journal one last time, realized the grim truth. The Black Night was a cycle, not a single event. Every year, the darkness would return, stronger and more cunning, claiming more souls if the villagers forgot its warning. The ritual was temporary, a delay rather than a solution. As the survivors whispered in fear, a faint knock echoed from a mosque door. Slowly, the fog outside seemed to swirl, forming the shape of a human shadow. The villagers froze. No one dared approach. The wind carried a chilling voice, almost human, almost familiar. The Black Night has not ended. It only waits. The villagers understood the warning. Even if they survived tonight, the entity would return, relentless and patient. And the mirror, the reflection, and the shadows were now part of their lives forever. Outside, Marabad appeared peaceful under the faint moonlight. But the village was no longer safe. The air carried whispers, shadows stretched unnaturally, and the ground trembled faintly. Proof that the Black Night cycle would continue, claiming new victims year after year. And in every reflection, every dark corner, the villagers could see it watching, waiting for the next Black Night.